When I was about 3 years old, we left to the United States, and that's where we lived in New York. Actually, near my not so close to my grandfather, but we were in the neighborhood, and that was the first time I realized that I have a somewhat famous grandfather. Although, I remember being at his home and meeting all these important people and not exactly realizing why he has no time for me. So as a kid, I can't say that him being famous was very pleasant for me. I can say that for the first time that I really realized that I have an important grandfather is I was having fun with friends, and then suddenly one of them heard on the news that Isaac Bashevis singer won the Nobel Prize. And he came up and he said, "Isn't that your grandfather?" And I said, "Yeah," but I had no real idea what is the Nobel Prize because I was a kibbutznik.
You have a specific memory as a child of your grandfather?
So 2 days a week, I would go in the afternoon to stay with him and his wife, with Alma. And he would talk to me about 4 or 5 minutes and then, just move on. And I would sit there for sometimes hours, and, Alma would check on me from time to time. So that's why I said that I don't really have a pleasant memory from being his granddaughter. But then I had, there were some like, I met Barbara Streisand, and I met Saul Bellow, and I went on him on the Queen Elizabeth to Europe, and so we had all kinds of. I have all kinds of moments or memories. I remember him, asking me a lot of crazy questions that you don't ask a young child. Like, what do you think about death? What do you think about life? What's the meaning of life for you? Do you think there are people on the stars? Things that
Wow.
I remember as a kid that I thought he's really weird.
How would you say your perspective on his literature legacy has evolved as you've grown up?
Well, I think that what I did know is that my father is translating his stories. I didn't know that my father is going to visit him from time to time, and that he always comes back home, and he's, frustrated, and he's talking about how hard he works on the translations, and that his father doesn't have much time for him. And also you have to remember that I had a grandmother in Israel that was his wife. So she also added also some of the stories about him. But I think that the first time that I really read his stories was for the exams when I was 18 years old. I read his story because I was supposed to write about his story, the slave. And that's the first time that I wrote something about him, and I got a straight A. And I was never a straight A student. So suddenly, I think that was the real connection. And then I started to read him, not a lot, but I think most of my education about my grandfather's story was listening to others talking about him. My father, my grandmother, my father and my mother, people that came to us. We would have all kinds of cousins or people that were visiting, all kinds of people that talked about him, because it took me many years later before I started really to read him and to enjoy it.
let me bring Howard into the conversation since I want to start connecting it to the work. So, Howard, having now seen you do the show yourself, having now seen the movie, what was the inspiration that made you want to take Gimpel the Fool first, adapt it into the stage play, and then into that incredible documentary film?
Well, first of all, it happened, on close to 20 years ago when I first did the play, and I sort of did it as a birthday present for myself. Why? Because at age 50, I sort of went into a bit of a depression. What else have I got to do in my life? I've done everything, and I remembered how much I loved acting, and I really felt, wow, this story is really just perfect for me, and I really connect to it, and it's also just like a story, like a one-man play. He's talking to the reader like I can talk to the audience. I thought it would be a birthday present. It was, as you know, it's not that easy to do a one-man play. You go through a lot of frustrations and all that, but in the end, it's given me a lot of gratification. And the film sort of happened after I was touring it. I took it all over the world. It was very nice that I could perform it in English all over because basically it's a classic story. So even in Armenia or Bulgaria, I would say, do you have the translation of the Bulgarian or the Armenian, whatever version of Gimpel the Fool? And they do. And I was very faithful to the story. I mean, I didn't change a word, and it was almost I adapted it so it was almost like just went along. And basically, I took it all over the world, all over the place, even to Egypt and to, like places like I would never have visited. And I felt very fortunate. And then when I was going to Poland uh, to present it at a festival that was going to go to 12 different towns where Bashevis Singer wrote and was raised and everything, my wife, in her wisdom, says I should document this. And I went and I documented it with, I asked, first of all, I found a director and they couldn't bring the director. So they said they'll find me a camera person. They found me this woman. We shot about 50 hours. I came back and then the epidemic of the corona started and I was just having a great time editing and it became a 4 or 5 year journey, which I just cherished. I didn't want the final cut to end because I was enjoying it so much, but eventually I made the final cut. And now for the basically since about a year and a half, we've been doing different festivals. It basically the first premiere of the film was in Nashville on October 15th, about a week after October 7th. And I was really debating whether I should go or not go, and I really wanted to go. I had planned to be like 2 or 3 weeks in America. And because October 7th happened, I just went for like 3 days just to go to the festival and come back. And the film became very relevant after October 7th because the huge new wave of anti-Semitism that was spreading all over the world, and this film sort of deals in its way about the latent anti-Semitism that still exists in Poland. And that was part of my meeting with the Polish people and the presenting of the play in these Polish towns. So I'm still part of the journey with the movie now, and I'm enjoying it very much. And yeah, it's been very. Gimpel is a part of me. I mean, he's in my office. Meirav gave me a painting of Bashevis Singer that his grandniece did, or your
His,
your your
his,
cousin, I think.
his sister's granddaughter.
Exactly. And it's staring at me all the time. I really feel Bashevis is a big part of me, and I feel him always watching me. And it's just been a great experience, all in all.
Meirav, how do you think your grandfather's works, like Gimpel the Fool, which was his breakthrough
Right.
piece, how do you think they resonate with contemporary audiences today differently than when they were written and resonated with a very specific kind of audience of that time?
I always say that when you read the Bible stories that were written thousands of years ago, you understand what people experience. You understand the people. So it's okay. The outside, the tafora, or what's the name of
The
the
Set.
settings,
Yes,
the
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 set
set.
settings.
setting.
The setting is different, but our inner world really doesn't change. We feel, we like, we dislike, we envy, we get upset. So I kind of feel that my grandfather and his stories, they have this touch. It doesn't really matter where are you, at what times, if you understand exactly the setting, but something about his character, something about the depth of or his ability um, to express the depth of the human being is just amazing, because so many people from so many different cultures and from so many different eras can relate to his stories, even if they're not Jewish, even if they know nothing about Judaism or the Jewish culture.
If I
So
can connect to what Meirav is saying, basically, first of all, Bashevis Singer said the only way to be universal is to be specific, and he's very specific.
right.
But to carry, I want to tell just a funny anecdote. When I did the play in Egypt, there's this woman who, after the play, came up to me, and she was one of the. She wasn't she didn't wear. She was like a very modern woman.
Mhm.
In Egypt, you don't usually see most of them. You only see their eyes. And when she came up to me and said, I'm Gimpel. I said, you're Gimpel? Said, yes, yes. I mean, I felt the whole time that I'm Gimpel. And I said, well, how do you feel that you're Gimpel? And she said, because I was living with this man for all the years, and I didn't know that he had another two wives. And I said, wow. And she says, now there's a law against it. Your husband has to tell you that he has other wives. But at that time he didn't know. And that's how she connected to Gimpel. And all it was amazing. And just talking about
Amazing.
how that he becomes relevant everywhere, to every time, every place, even though he's so Jewish, so specific.
Right. Over the years, I've been going around the world. I've been to many places, opening shows and talking about him, and all over the world, really, in Singapore, in Australia, and everywhere. And it's amazing how people show up, not Jewish people, but people from all ages and from different cultures, and they all relate to the character as if he wrote about them. So I really think that's his magic.
I was going to ask Howard, you
Yeah.
performed your play in little towns in Poland. I'm
Yeah.
assuming that there were no Jews in the audience.
Almost no, there were never any Jews in the audience at all, and but they were so. I mean, it was really, first of all, they were so into the play. It was a part. There was also part. The people that came wanted to know about their neighbors. These were people that were, there were a lot of people that had resistance to this festival, the Singer Festival, and all that represented. But the people that came wanted to know, and of course, they totally related to it, and it was a very special experience doing it for them.
How did that influence your understanding both of Bashevis's work in the context of writing about those places and the people who were watching it in a modern Poland, knowing that anti-Semitism is like the undercurrent underneath it all?
It was, I mean, I had some very special experiences there. So I can tell you a little something about what happened when we went and I did that confrontation scene with the mayor who of Pruchnik. The mayor, the first this when I went first to Pruchnik, I just wanted to do kind of a Woody Allen sequence from like Zelig, where he manages to in Zelig to become part of it. So I had Gimpel sort of walking and sort of seeing what was happening. That was the idea. But when I went there, I told my daughter who was shooting at the time, I said, you know what? I have this nightmare that we're going to come there and all these people from Pruchnik are going to come out and start beating me. And actually it almost happened shaking because there was a buzz of there's a Jew here, a little kike around, and we just basically ran away from the scene. We got in our car, we drove like 20 minutes before we calmed down because we felt like
Wow.
there was a latent anti-Semitism rising very strong, that there was a Jew in their town. And then I went back again with a Polish photographer who basically would translate. This was something that in the last time I went to Poland, people had told me, you're still missing in the film your feeling towards the Polish people. And we went to the mayor, and I was totally prepared this time. I was, psychologically prepared to confront him, to talk to him. And I had the filmmaker who would translate from Polish. And so there was a lot of different stages of my time with the Polish people.
We know that Bashevis loved his translators. He was very often known as someone who was very flirtatious with some of the women in his life. I don't know details, but I'm curious about how those aspects of his life, do you think, Meirav, may have affected his work?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, I think a few years ago I participated in a movie that was called The Muse of Bashevis. I was invited to to the television to talk about the movie, and I think that what really, they were asking me if he was a womanizer, and I kind of feel that he was, in many aspects, he was a child searching for a warm, good mom. Um, you know, really in a childish manner, although sexuality became a very important part, and although he was, considered a womanizer, but when I saw him or met him, or when I, had seen all kinds of encounters, like when I met his translator, or his, he had a secretary that would go with him everywhere. My feeling was that he's asking everyone to love him. And then once he felt love, then he can move on to the next. But he was in a search after a motherly love. It didn't feel mature. It felt, really. But because
But
he was a
still,
very
his writing about
Well, his
sexuality, his sexual encounters were very vivid and intimate, and very
exactly.
experienced. And
Right. And I don't know how much of it was really his experience or his abilities to fantasize and he would talk to me not about sexuality, but about all kinds of things, about the kibbutz, about Israel, and he knew a lot and had a very good ability to fantasize about things and to understand, or to somehow kind of from a small description to make a large picture. So I think that was, so it was really the search for love, and
mm,
sexuality became a very vivid part of it. And
I think he also explored the theme of, when does something become a sin? In other words, how
right,
can sex be sinful if it gives so much pleasure? And if you're not
right,
hurting anybody, I think that was one of his philosophies, then it shouldn't be a sin. I mean, he was a very free thinker. Even though he came from such a religious home, he so I think that's also a big part of it too. But he was married for so many years. It's not like he wasn't. He's with her, with Elma, all this time.
right. But
right.
this is a very interesting conversation, because part of what made him so amazing and so successful was that he wasn't afraid to go into that controversial world of
Right.
mysticism and sex and
Supernatural.
demons and
Yeah.
supernatural and Kabbalistic, knowing full well that it made him less um, less preferred by the literati, the Yiddish literati at the time.
Right.
Let me
Mhm.
let me go back to Meirav for just a second. You know, we haven't really talked about your father.
Right.
And I would like for you to tell me how you feel, you know, what role do you think your father has, especially considering again, the complex relationship of being the son of, and the years of estrangement, the years of not, the years of yes, but now, what role do you feel your father has in shaping your grandfather and his father's legacy in the world today?
Mhm. It's interesting. It's a very interesting question because, I'm thinking about it. My father was a very sweet man, very generous, very a family person. He was very warm, he was lovable, he was very different personality than his father. Um, he was had not an easy life, but was always very optimistic. And he always told the story about, their separation and how they met again. But you didn't feel anger. You didn't feel, he didn't say anything bad about his father, as if my father, uh, had the role of um, um, not allowing Bashevis to be the bad guy. You see, still he has a son, and although he deserted his wife and son, still he sent him letters, and he cared about him. So I feel that my father never gave up his father. He also, the same way that my grandfather was searching for the love of a mother, my father was searching for a love of a father. And uh, I think his main role was to say, um, um, he has a family. There are some normal parts about him. He's not only this Michiganer, I kind of feel like he kept his normal parts in some ways. And also, my father took the role of translating him to Hebrew and making sure that my grandfather is not only known in the United States, but also in Israel. And he talked about him, and he went to conferences and interviewed people about him. So I think he took a good role, the role of making a sad story into a good story.
Let me
Mhm.
let me ask you both this next question. Um, how do you feel about Gimpel the Fool as a literary piece in terms of its significance within the body of Bashevis's work and how it adapts to different media? And finally, how do you feel about Yiddish, the Yiddish language, whether it's translated into English or Hebrew or Swedish? Um, how do you feel about Yiddish in that context as it moves forward into the next half of the 21st century.
But I think Yiddish culture is a beautiful culture, and I've grown to appreciate it so much. About Bashevis and Gimpel and the literature, I think two things. First of all, Gimpel the Fool is a brilliant story. It's also an archetypal character that can be in any religion. You always have the holy fool, and it's a beautiful. Though he was a master of the short story, but I think Bashevis was also a master of of the novels. I mean, and what I tried to do is I basically like the story where the reader imagines everything in the play and also in the film. I didn't try to portray the surrealistic world visually. I kept it orally. So we heard the voices, and there's the play and also the film has all these characters' voices and different outside world of that Gimpel feels and sees, and and also the viewer in the movie does not see them. He imagines them when he hears the voices.
Meirav?
I kind of feel like I don't really know the Yiddish language or culture. I didn't grow up in this atmosphere. I never really had an opportunity to learn more about Yiddish. Lately, my brother Noam, who lives in Japan, started to learn Yiddish. And it's amazing, he would tell us how many things now he knows about Yiddish and how fascinating it is, and how, he feels too bad that we never knew about the stories. But my father didn't speak Yiddish, and my mother never spoke Yiddish, so that's about Yiddish. But Gimpel Tom is a whole different story. When I read Gimpel Tom, I felt very upset with my grandfather because I was young and I thought, why would he create such a character? What is the meaning of why would someone write about a person that is so deserted by others, and then slowly as I started to meet the characters of my grandfather or my grandfather's characters, I realized that each character had um, a main feature or main characteristic or main something that the whole character was built around, as if the main character is not a balanced character, but it has something extreme about him and him or her. And I felt in many ways that that's how my grandfather felt about himself. He felt as if he's not a full person, as if reality and fantasy are one.
Your grandfather was probably the greatest spokesperson for the Yiddish language in history.
And I share the same feeling Howard was talking about. I come back to Poland, I meet all these young and wonderful people that talk Yiddish and care about the Yiddish language, and they're not even Jewish, and they do the festival, and they're amazed by this wonderful culture. And I basically know nothing about it.
But I did show the film to this school in Modi'in that are going to Poland as part of their, March of the Living or whatever. And I tried to stress to them that when they go there, they don't have to just go and say, "Oh, we're still alive and look, we're strong," and all that. That's not the point. You're going there also to try to see the great culture that was wiped out and to explore that. I told them to read some Bashevis Singer after they saw the movie and before they go to Poland, read some Bashevis Singer, really understand what that world was that was lost. And that's something that's important also, is that we have to consciously perpetuate the memory and just show the richness of the culture.